Hello, welcome to another edition of Empty Hand, Open Mind. Today we're going to continue our conversation about kata, specifically Goju Ryu. So within Goju Ryu, there are many versions of kata. So for certain, still today, there's 3 versions of Sanseieru being performed. One version, the IOGKF and TOGKF and the Jundokan perform. Another version with Toby Maigeti, another organization in Ruha, performs. That Toby Maigeti is a jumping front kick. And then Higaseko Sensei's group and also Ryu, the art of Ryu, they do another version of Sanseieru. And so, which version is correct? Well, if you perform them correctly with good body mechanics and you understand the kata and what it teaches, then all of them, they're all correct. So you can recognize each of the 3 versions as Sanseieru. So there's no reason to debate which one is the best or which one is correct. They all serve the same purpose and they all look the same. They just have, they all look like Sanseieru, they're just done differently. So you can, even a person who's not a practitioner of Goju Ryu could watch the 3 versions of Sanseieru and see that they were similar and that they are in fact the same kata, just done a little differently. So the same holds true for Sesan. Sesan kata is in Shorin-ryu, which came from Shurite. It's in Tamari, which came from Tamari-te, and it's in Naha, which came, of course, from Naha. So Naha-te became Goju Ryu. Also in Naha is Uechi-ryu and Urui-ryu. Tamari-te is being taught again today, but a lot of it was absorbed in Shorin-ryu. But my point is, there's at least 6 systems doing Sesan kata. And you can recognize all of them as Sesan, but they're done differently. And Sesan and Sanshin kata are 2 of the oldest kata on Okinawa. Sesan may be, in fact, the oldest of all of them. So it's clearly a very important kata when you have systems from Shuri, Tamari, and Naha all doing Sesan. Miyagi Chojun Sensei said the Sesan kata is the only kata ever needed for fighting. Primarily, he said that because of the low kicks and the emphasis on Zuki. Most Goju Ryu kata don't incorporate a lot of Zuki technique. Sesan does. So anyway, it's clear that if 6 or more systems, different styles, do Sesan, it must be very important. Also, it's an indicator it's very important when it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, kata on all of Okinawa. It couldn't have survived if it wasn't useful, if all these style heads and all these masters didn't see great value in it. So, Suparinpei or Pitchurin, there was originally 3, Jo, Chu, and Gi. Today, many practitioners state that the kata and Suparinpei that everyone practices today is Jo. A first generation student that trained with Miyagi Sensei from 1930 to 35 or 36 said that today's version is Chu, and that Chu represents the focus on the middle body. The current Suparinpei that everyone runs certainly does that. Jo focuses more on the middle and upper body. And he learned Jo from Miyagi Chojun Sensei, and he said that Gi is gone, it's lost. So the third Suparinpei or Pitchurin no longer exists, or at least we don't know of anybody that does it. I can tell you from having seen and learned the version of Jo, which focuses on the upper body, it is not just a different version of the Suparinpei that we do. It's a completely different kata. So, in my opinion, it contains much more Chinese influence, more open hand focus, more Chinese type movements than the current modern version that everybody else does, that's referred to as Jo, but according to a first generation student of Miyagi Sensei who learned it, today's version is Chu, and the other version he learned was Jo. So I'm going to go with him because he trained with Miyagi Chojun directly, and he learned those two kata, both Jo and Chu. So for that reason, that's what we teach, and that's what I share with my students. You can go with whatever you desire or whatever you were taught. But I'm just talking about kata and different versions of kata. And so unlike Sesan and unlike Sanseieru, Suparinpei and its three kata are not three different versions of the same kata. They are totally, completely different kata. So I don't know why they contain the same name, but they are not the same kata. So regards to Sanseieru and regards to Sesan, they're the same kata done differently. In regards to Suparinpei, they're three separate kata. Now, when we talk about Sanchin, there's the original open hand version, and the breathing is more like quickly blowing salt out of the palm of your hand. Where the closed fist version, in very extreme, hard dynamic tension, and harmonizing breath to movement and rooting, is more for health and for structure and for posture, etc. And the original open hand version was much more martial. And as such, the breathing was very different because you don't want your opponent to recognize or be able to hear your breath and then time attacks based on the breathing they're hearing you do. So you also wouldn't stand rigid and in dynamic tension for during a battle like the current Sanchin teaches. So there's three versions of Sanchin, and all of them are still Sanchin. So there's the open hand version with quicker breathing, but still rooted, still using tension, but not at the same time, only at the point of contact, other than staying rooted. Miyagi Chojun Sensei, that's how we refer to it, Miyagi Chojun Sensei's version, which includes the backward stepping, and Higo no Kanyo Sensei's version, which is like Miyagi Chojun Sensei's version, except it turns. So some people refer to it as the turning version. Some say Sanchin Ich and Sanchin Dai or Sanchin Ni, etc. But in our organization, the Koryu Koshukai, we refer to it as open hand version, Miyagi Chojun Sensei's version, and Higo no Kanyo Sensei's version of Sanchin. So it doesn't matter about versions or alternative or kata that vary one from another ruha or style or system or dojo or organization. What matters is that you still learn and understand the principles and the fighting strategy and the benefits of learning that kata and what that kata represents. There's no sense in arguing, especially as mature adults, there's no sense in arguing about who's correct. If you perform it correctly, you're all correct. We are all correct. If you perform it the way you were taught, you're correct. If it's recognizable to other ruha, you're probably correct. If you use good stances, good posture, good biomechanics, good punching, good blocking, good movement, good transitions, good breathing, then you do the kata well. And anyone that watched it would think that you do it well. And that you have worked hard and long and that you have improved, and the kata is getting better and better over time, and your ability to perform it and understand it also increases over time. That's what's really important, not what version you do. Don't get hung up. That's kind of like politics. Don't get hung up in the politics of karate. Just focus on what you're doing. I mean, you chose some place to train, and you chose somebody to train with. So you got to trust that person. And if you trust them, then train the way they teach you. If you don't trust them, find a new teacher, one that you do trust. But I can tell you this, karate is full of folklore, exaggeration, fabrication, and all kinds of other things that was done intentionally before the internet to help certain people point toward them as being the successor, of being the most knowledgeable, of being the one that learned the complete system. When the fact is, the majority of students, when Miyagi Chojun Sensei died, they taught one another the kata that they had not learned from Miyagi Sensei. So student A learned 3 kata, student B learned 3 kata, and they exchanged. Now they both knew 6, okay? And then they go to student C and they learn 3 more. And now they know 9. So what happened is, and what's very documented, is Miyagi Chojun Sensei taught students 1 to 3 kata. That was norm until much later in life. And then he kind of started formalizing it, and he taught everybody, especially school children and high schoolers. He started teaching in the very late 40s, I think February of 48, he started teaching students, all students, Sanchin, Saifa, Seonchin, and Sisonchin. That's when he formed order instead of a formal curricula, instead of picking and choosing a kata specifically for each student. So that was just more of the standardization process that was occurring at the time prior to his death. But we do know that Miyagi Chojun Sensei did not pick any successor. We do not know if that's because he didn't think that any were worthy, or that he didn't think that any of them were the right person to take over as successor of his style that he created and founded, or if he had not taught any of them the complete system. I don't know, and neither do you. We'll never know. We know all of them claim to have learned all the kata, and common sense and logic tells me that's completely untrue. I don't believe that for a minute. Every one of the most seniors say that, or their descendants say, that they learned all of the kata. Well, they may have learned all the kata, but not from Miyagi Sensei. A lot of them didn't even train with him after World War II. So, regardless of whether they what they did or did not learn, we know that that does not coincide with how Miyagi Sensei taught at the time until 1948. Also, too, Miyagi Chojun Sensei kind of had a new group start in 48 and stayed till 53 when he passed away. And Aichi Miyazato Sensei was helping him with teaching the police academy and also at the Garden Dojo. And the students that were in the Garden Dojo at the time of his passing moved to the Jundokan when Aichi Miyazato Sensei opened the Jundokan following the passing of Miyagi Chojun Sensei. We also know that Miyagi Chojun Sensei's wife went to the famous meeting of the masters, the senior students, and asked them to support Aichi Miyazato Sensei. We also know that Aichi Miyazato Sensei received all of the Hojo-Undo equipment. Regarding Miyagi Chojun Sensei's gi, it's important to note that Aichi Miyazato Sensei went to Tokyo, and he even took Kai Miyagi Chojun Sensei's son, medicine. He purchased the gi for his teacher. He brought it back, and that's the gi. Miyagi Chojun Sensei rarely, if ever, wore it. And that gi was given to Mateko Yagi Sensei. But that gi was purchased by Aichi Miyazato Sensei, not by Miyagi Chojun Sensei. That's neither here nor there. He still has a gi of Miyagi Chojun Sensei. But the family specifically requested, his wife requested, that the seniors support Aichi Miyazato, which they did not. But Aichi Miyazato Sensei was one that trained with Miyagi Sensei before and after World War II. Higaseko Sensei spent a lot of time in Saipan. Higaseko Sensei used to come on New Year's and bring Miyagi Chojun Sensei a gift and pay his respects. But Higaseko Sensei didn't really train with Miyagi Sensei after the war at all. And so it doesn't matter where you train, as long as it's fulfilling the purpose and the reason you train, and as long as you're learning good karate that is complete and that you're able to understand, and that the transmission of the style and the system and the sensei you're training with is able to transmit and convey that information to you and improve you and your karate, as well as your understanding and performance of that karate. So would Miyagi Chojun Sensei recognize a student who trained from 48 to 53 and who was 21 or 22 at the time of his passing? I don't think so. In fact, he didn't. He didn't name a successor. So I don't think so. Would he teach students who trained from 48 to 53 and that were teenagers his entire system? I don't think so. He didn't teach his most senior students the entire system. I interviewed 5 first-generation students. I trained with 2 of them in just seminars. I trained with one of them 6 to 8 hours a day for 7 days straight, and he trained from 1930 to 1935 or 36. And he was already very adept at Matsumoto Shorin-ryu when his uncle took him to Miyagi Chojun Sensei and asked him to please teach him. And that was in 28 or 29, and he began teaching him in 1930 at the passing of his uncle. So he learned Sanchin and 4 other kata. So if a student who is already very, very proficient and skilled at karate comes and trains with you privately for 5 or 6 years and only learns Sanchin and 4 other kata, it doesn't make any sense to me that Miyagi Chojun Sensei, late in life, decided, hey, I'm going to teach teenagers all of my kata, my entire system, my complete system, but I'm not going to name them as my successor because the elders in Okinawa wouldn't even take me serious doing so. But, hopefully they'll practice it their whole life, and as they train their entire life, they'll keep improving in it, they'll develop great understanding, and everything will be great. But the fact is, no matter what story is told, no matter who tells that story, no matter what their rank, Miyagi Chojun Sensei did not name a successor. So everyone who trained with him is a successor of some sort, right? But not the successor, not the only successor, right? So we have multiple versions of Goju Ryu. And we also have multiple versions of Goju Ryu Kata. And that's fine, as long as the people teaching it understand the kata and what it teaches and what its principles are and what its fighting strategy is. And they understand it and how it benefits the student. And if the student and how it benefits combat, and what is it retaining? Why is it preserved? So if you have that understanding and it's being transmitted to you, then that's fine. Regarding Giksai Daiichi Ni, some systems in Goju Ryu do Giksai Dai Ni, half of it, exactly like they do Giksai Daiichi. Miyagi Chojun Sensei said that Giksai Dai Ni was to introduce open hand technique. So some schools like Jundokan, TOGKF, IOGKF, and some others, I guess, do Giksai Dai Ni, the first half of it like Giksai Daiichi, and then they open up their hand. Other systems, some Shorikan and some Higaseko Sensei group students or off branches, do the second Kata Giksai Dai Ni with all open hand for the Yoku Ukes. So Chudan Yoku Uke, instead of being closed fist, is open hand Kaki Uke or Hiki Uke, depending on how you say it or what you call it. And our organization chooses to do Giksai Dai Ni with open hand. And we already did Giksai Daiichi with all of our fists closed and the whole kata's closed, and we don't see the need in repeating it for the second one. But that's just our call, and that's our choice, and that's how we practice it. And you get to practice it the way you want to, and you get to practice it the way your teacher tells you to. And so neither one's wrong. They're both still Giksai Dai Ni. Just one is done exactly like Giksai Daiichi halfway through, and the other one's done with open hand throughout the whole kata, and which is what we believe the intent was. And we certainly think it's more beneficial. If your purpose and goal is to introduce open hand technique, then use open hand technique. And so these kata were a bridge to some kata to learn and to standardize and to use for school children before learning the Kaishu classical kata. And they still have a lot of value today, and they really emphasize the Kihon. They really help students improve on Kihon, and they also help to get students fit prior to the war. So kata, there's no reason to spend time, energy, and stress over who's doing the correct kata, which version's correct, who's the successor. The answer is none of them are the successor, and all of them are the successor, okay? Now you're a successor because you train in Goju Ryu. Which kata is correct? All of them are correct and all of them are incorrect. because everybody makes mistakes in kata, and if you practice your whole life, you may get close to doing a perfect kata, and then your kata may be correct. But until then, it's probably incorrect. So in short, everyone's incorrect. So we should quit fighting about it and quit arguing about it and just focus on us and what we do and how we train and just get the very best we can become at doing that. That's what we should do. And, it's great to preserve kata, and kata does evolve. Sometimes that evolution means it changes a little, and sometimes it means it doesn't. But I can tell you that back in the old days, just off my research and my interviews with first generation students and stuff, that students absolutely were taught the same kata differently. I was always brought up, and as I came through the ranks and kept training, I was told that, well, people trained with the founder for different lengths of time. They had different abilities, different capacities. They trained different frequencies. They trained a different number of days during the week, etc. And that's why it's different. But that doesn't make any sense, because I trained with the same teacher for 42 years, and we did the same thing for 14 years, and then for the remainder of that time, we did the same thing. So we were Japanese Goju Ryu, and then we went to Okinawan Goju Ryu, and then whichever one we were, we stayed that the whole time. It didn't change. You could go away for 15 years and come back, and it was the same. At least it was close to the same. So that never really fit. That would have some effect. It would have some bearing, and it makes a little bit of sense, but not in whole. But it does make sense that the teacher taught different people the same kata different ways. And it used to be one-on-one instruction, and the teacher got to decide what they taught them. And it was for combat and practicality. It wasn't for performance. And it was for function. It wasn't for form. It was to defend yourself, or to defend others, or to go to war. So that's different. That's a different purpose. And people had different abilities and different disabilities and different capacities. And the teacher taught them one-on-one or two-on-one, and had the right and made sense to teach them however they saw fit. And that's what happened, and you got variances. And then when the founder passed, Miyagi Chojun Sensei passed, senior students taught each other the kata they didn't learn. Well, based on how Miyagi Sensei taught them and how long they trained and how long they practiced it and how much correction they received, it varied. It varied. And then they got it and they altered it a little bit. Their kohai or senpai or doshi taught them. And then they had it for a few years, and then maybe they altered it a little bit. I don't know. That's not what any of them tell you. What all of them tell you is this is how they learned from Miyagi Sensei. And that just simply isn't true. It isn't. That's being naive. So Miyagi Sensei did not teach all the senior students. I believe, this is my opinion, I don't believe he taught all the senior students all the kata. There's a lot of senior students that, let's take it back for a minute. Masanobu Shinjo Sensei did not learn from Miyagi Sensei, but he went to each of the senior students to learn the kata that they had been taught by Miyagi Chojun Sensei. So if each of the senior students had learned all of the kata and knew the complete system, why did Masanobu Shinjo Sensei, who's very talented, very skilled karateka, very serious, why did he go to each of them to learn specific kata? Because they didn't know the others. And he knew they didn't know the others. And back in those times, they admitted they didn't know the others. And then they eventually admitted they taught one another. So let's bust the bubble of fabrication and just tell the truth. And then you have to accept your own truth. You have to find which senior lineage most is attractive to you and that you have the most confidence, trust, and faith in. And then you got to follow that, because Miyagi Sensei didn't name anybody. He literally did not name anyone to succeed him. And he knew he was sick. And so without it being said, in that culture, in Japanese culture, and at that time Okinawa was absolutely a part of Japan, but in that culture and in Okinawan culture, the son takes over. And it goes without saying. Aichi Miyazato Sensei passed away, and his son took over to run the Judokan, even though he's not near the most senior. This has happened over and over and over. And then the seniors help them and teach them and guide them and develop them further. And but they're the head, they're the concho. Okay, so maybe Miyagi Sensei never appointed anybody because his son was alive. Okay, so perhaps it was just automatic, and people go, no, because he didn't attend the funeral. Oh, that's hogwash. That's hogwash. You don't know his family. I don't know his family. We didn't know their family dynamics. We know Miyagi Sensei loved him because he sent Aichi Miyazato Sensei to Tokyo to give his son medicine. Of course, a father loved his son, especially considering he lost children during the war, during World War II. He lost his top student during World War II. So that's silly to say, no, he was excluded and wasn't named the successor because he didn't attend the funeral. So your ability to inherit your parents' system based on whether or not you made it over to their funeral, it makes no sense. People just say the dumbest things. If none of my children attended my funeral, or they couldn't because of finances or because of distance or because of the times or because travel was dangerous at that time, I don't know. They were broke, whatever. They would know without it being said that I didn't love them any less. And the rest of the family wouldn't judge them or say, boy, they didn't love their father because they didn't show up to the funeral. Well, maybe they couldn't. You don't know. You weren't there. So you should stay out of the family business, right? Mind your own business. Worry about your own family. So my thing is that without it being named, with no successor being named, without Miyagi Chojun Sensei appointing anybody, it's probably his son. That's who probably his real true successor was. But everybody who trains in Okinawan Goju-Ryu is a successor of some sort, just not by appointment, but by practice. Okay, keep training, study those kata. They all have something to offer. Trust your sensei, trust the system, trust the version of kata he teaches you or she teaches you. Get busy and make it perfect. All the best and have a great week of training.